This week we bring you part 2 of our tribute to great Australian artists.
Hey everybody, this is Big Randy with the Smarts Project. I've provided security and transportation for some of the biggest names in the music industry.
I'm John. I've been a musician for over 20 years, playing everything from metal and punk to bluegrass and country.
We're bringing you a podcast about some of the weirdest myths and legends that the music industry has to offer. This is Tall Tales and Music Mythology.
Hey friends, this is Mary from the Mary Movement Podcast. We tell true stories that will inspire, encourage, and warm your heart. So join the movement at themarymovement.com.
Hey everybody, this is Big Randy with the Smarts Project. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to listen to us. And with me on my side, as always, is my partner spinning the wheels of steel, Mr. Jonathan Glove.
Hello, everybody.
So you had some corrections corner, didn't you?
Yes. So as I was listening to the podcast and editing it last week, definitely came across a couple of corrections that I always make the joke with Randy that I'm the super pedantic one who always agonizes over every little detail like that. So
'tis true.
Yeah. Since we recorded remotely and the tracks didn't line up, I did have to listen to the entire episode pretty painstakingly to edit it as best I could, and I definitely noticed several things. One was that I accidentally referred to AC/DC drummer Phil Rudd as Paul Rudd at one point, Paul Rudd being the noted actor, so I'm assuming that was just kind of a subconscious slip. Ant-Man definitely does not play drums for the venerable hard rock act there.
You don't know that. Maybe he does in practice sessions. You
right?
Don't know.
I mean, no. He, according to I Love You Man, he plays bass. He slapped the bass, man. But no. I love Paul Rudd and Phil Rudd. Well, yeah, Phil Rudd's just a great utilitarian drummer. The dude's a solid timekeeper. No offense there by any means. I apologize for that. Also, I wanted to point out, too, that despite Tim Armstrong attacking one of my favorite artists and guitarists, Josh Homme, I still love and respect Tim's bands. Operation Ivy, who I kind of just mentioned in passing, was a legendary ska punk act from the 80s, and Rancid was an absolutely amazing punk act as well. I know my cousin Aaron absolutely loves Rancid. I remember going to their house when I was in junior high. He was in high school, and his whole room was covered in nothing but magazine and press clippings from Rancid. And that band is, oh man, Rancid and Op Ivy both are just legendary. So no offense meant to Tim Armstrong whatsoever. That was just a comment on Josh Homme's hilarious take on that whole thing. I have to tell you, I do like what Josh said on that one thing where, I'm 6'5" and I have red hair. It's not hard to find me. No. And he played football in high school and was just ridiculous. I want to say he had 13 sacks. So for people like Randy who are unfamiliar with the sports ball terminology, a sack is when a defensive player, so the person on the team that doesn't have the ball in football, a sack is when a defensive player tackles the quarterback before the quarterback can throw the ball. And again, for Randy, the quarterback is the throwy guy.
The throwy guy, that's right.
So when the quarterback doesn't have a chance to throw the ball or pass it to one of the running backs, aka the running guy, that's called a sack.
How hard is that? People understand that.
I'm just good at talking non-sports fan terminology. You know what I mean?
So for people of my sports level, so the big runny guy on the team that doesn't have the ball, he tackles the throwy guy before he could throw the ball to the catchy guy.
Yeah, kind of. So the non-ball side, if they tackle the throwy guy while he is still holding the ball,
right,
that's called a sack.
Now, see, the way I describe it is so much easier. And I got to tell you, for anybody that doesn't know me, I have to tell you that it's really frustrating sometimes to go out and people, oh, you're a big guy. Did you play football? No, I didn't play football. Well, I did, but it was only for 2 weeks. And that's a long story that I'll be more than happy to tell you face to face, but I'm not going to go in on a podcast. But
well, dude, with your size, you could be like the entire line. Like, you are a big man, so.
Well, yeah, but I'm a little bit bigger down south than I am up north with those guys. They got the shoulders and the big chest and the arms that look like legs, whereas mine, I'm pretty much a middleweight in the sense that all my weight is in the middle. You know?
I don't know, man. Don't sell yourself short. You're a big dude, that's for sure. But
oh hell. Well, let me throw out the smarts update real quick. Last week I met with some great folks here in Virginia Beach that they have a studio, and you know, I'm to people that aren't in studios like my friend Joe Carroll and John Mathis and people like that. You know, I have a hard time trying to throw any kind of legitimacy to people that say they have a quote unquote studio, because usually they're, you know, like my buddy Zach, where, you know, where he wants to make beats, you know, and shit. Like, nothing against Zach, I love him, but
no, love that kid to death. Holy
but
crap.
There's so many knuckleheads that are living in their mom's basement or working out of the garage or whatever, saying, yeah, I'll make beats, and one of these days I'm gonna, you know, throw some shit out to Ludacris or whatever. Yeah, okay, well, you know, Luda, but set the bar high, you know, nothing against that, but you know, more than likely the odds aren't in your favor. But these guys are legit. They have a real studio, and the thing that was funny about it is I sent you pictures of the studio, right? Yeah. So according to them, they have somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 worth of equipment, and I was like, shut your face. And he was like, oh, see this road case right here, which is empty. All it has is like the cushion in it to put stuff in it. Yeah, just the case was $200. I'm like, oh shit, you really do have $80,000 to $100,000 worth of stuff here, you know.
Road cases are crazy expensive, and so are flight cases. In other words, like cases that are made to be handled for like on like an airplane.
Oh, right.
And stuff like that. Those things are just crazy expensive.
So I actually have a meeting tonight with them again, because I met one of the guys last week, and now I'm meeting the other guy tonight. But they have a program that they put together where they want to take like one or two students that really show a, you know, I guess a proclivity. That's about like the biggest word I know.
Good
Is that
word,
correct?
bro.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that they have a proclivity to this type of thing, and they're genetically predisposed for music, and pull them in and, you know, show them how to produce and to do the engineering aspect of it, you know. And you know, man, I was really surprised at how many kids, students, like in high school, that are genuinely interested in music but have no desire whatsoever to sing or rap or play an instrument or anything like that. It's just they want to learn the engineering aspect. I was fascinated by that.
And that's an important thing, man, because like a lot of people, I think a massive chunk of the population does not understand just how much goes into the recording, the engineering. To be technical part of things. It's crazy. I have a much better than the average bare knowledge of it, and I don't know shit about it. You know, like I know how much I don't know. Is kind of the thing. And oh man, it's daunting how much there is to learn about that, especially when you start getting into, you know, having to check whether things are out of phase or not. Like, oh, hey, I need to rotate the microphone, you know, 180 degrees to make sure it's not out of phase with this other thing over here.
Yeah.
It's nuts, man.
The stuff that he was telling me, and I mean, you know, he knows my general level of education on that type of stuff, and just the stuff he was saying, I was like, okay, you need to stop talking right now, because I get everything that you're saying, but let's not push it, you know. So so anyway, I'm meeting with them tonight. They got a great program lined up. I got a feeling we're going to take them in under the Smarts Project 501c3, and it's really I really liked everything that we were talking to him about. Also, we've teamed up with Phase Limo in Norfolk, Virginia, and they have locked in transportation for the students and the artists for the program. So we'll actually have real limos that will be available for bringing in the artists back and forth from the airport, or, if they don't have like a tour bus or whatever.
Right.
But also, we have the limos that are available for like photo ops. So like, if you have, whenever we do the program, we're talking about a choir that has anywhere between 60 and 100 kids. So the thought of transporting 14 of them at a time in the vehicle, that's kind of, so it might be a bit much, so really what we'll do is we'll just set up a photo op and do kind of like a red carpet for them and really make it kind of look nice for them and, try to help them out with their day whenever they open up for whoever the artist is that they have. But anyway, that's all I got for the update. You had some music news?
Cool. Well, actually, first too, I know we talked a little bit about, we were talking about pub rock last week, and I thought that maybe you mentioned that there was a guy you had been listening to that was kind of a country-ish sounding guy that's kind of like Bob Dylan. Did you have a chance to look up who that was by chance?
Oh, hell no. But you know what?
Oh, shit.
I can look up on my what I've watched list, and I'm almost sure that I can. Yeah,
because like like I said last week, I had a sneaking suspicion that it was Billy Bragg, and I should have messaged you sometime this week to ask you about that, because I put notes in here about like, hey, ask Randy about who he was listening to.
Yeah, I'm going through. Trying to find videos, mashup. Hell, I can't figure it out right now.
Gotcha. Well, either way, Billy Bragg was who I thought it probably was, and if it is, or whether it was or wasn't, you should definitely check him out. And Billy Bragg did a great collaboration several years ago with a band I really like called Wilco, who's kind of become almost like a joke in terms of, oh, hey, like everyone who's into indie rock likes Wilco. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason why. Like at one point, Wilco was not just a joke about that type of thing. But so whether you have or haven't listened to him, it's definitely worth checking him out and checking out his collaboration with Wilco.
Oh, here it is. It's Slim Dusty.
Whoa, yeah, I've never heard of that guy. Slim Dusty,
his song is called "A Pub with No Beer," and I'm almost positive that this is going to be way more redneck than what you were talking about.
Okay, I'll check that out then. Slim Dusty, because that is not a name that I recognize at all.
Now, in the video, he comes out and he's singing it, but then like halfway through the song, he actually brings out the guy that wrote the song, and then they sing it together, which I thought was really kind of cool. Yeah.
Okay, does it say who sang it originally?
No, well, I think it's his song. Like his buddy wrote it. I mean, he might be an artist. Anybody that's Australian, I really apologize, because I'm sorry I don't know y'all's music scene as well as I should. But I think the guy is he might be some kind of like a minor artist that just wrote it, and then this guy actually recorded it. So maybe like kind of like a ghostwriter +1 type thing.
I'll check that out then, because I'm curious about it. Again, I've never heard of this guy, so I'm definitely intrigued to listen to that. But yeah. So on. Oh, sorry, what?
No, go ahead with the. You had some music news?
Yeah. I found this article and thought this was interesting, especially because this A is a band we've talked about several times, and B, it's a band whose one of their members I've trashed on several times, and I'm trying to not do that as much now, in light of our last episode. But Metallica plans on making their own whiskey.
Shut up.
I know, right? They are actually partnering with Maker's Mark to work on this. What? I know, right? Which is pretty interesting. I saw this pop up on my Google News feed this week, and obviously I was like, oh shit, I have to read this, and naturally immediately put it into my notes for this week's episode. There's a quote from Well, I'll read you the quote here. So, San Francisco, the home of Metallica, Louisville, the home of bourbon, and Nashville, the home of music. One of those three seems to make sense. Dave Pickerel, the former master distiller from Maker's Mark, told WhiskeyCast, a whiskey-based podcast, if you couldn't infer that from the name. He said,
in a burst of creativity.
I know, right? He said, I'm voting for San Francisco and the Bay Area if nothing falls apart. And so yeah, the band is looking at making their own whiskey, presumably near their hometown of San Francisco. The first thing that many fans, including myself, thought of was bad puns surrounding the band's cover of Tin Lizzy's Whiskey in the Jar, and a flurry of tweets cropped up involving the song's title there. So yeah, I'm curious to see where this goes. Although Metallica is far from the first band or musician or artist to pimp their own alcohol, of course. Maynard James Keenan, frontman of Pucifer, A Perfect Circle, and of course Tool, has his own line of wines, Caduceus. Iron Maiden has their own beer, Trooper, and I see that all the time at my favorite local liquor store. And then, I mean, there's a ton of artists with their own wines and whiskeys and various alcohols. Apparently Hansen has a beer called Hops beer, which simultaneously makes me laugh and greatly angers me. Mumford and Sons has a whiskey. I just like, okay. And literally like all these, all these bands and artists have their names. Like Vince Neil has Tatuado vodka and tequila, Tres Rios tequila. Justin Timberlake has one called 901 tequila. Didn't know about that. Marilyn Manson has one called Absinthe Mansonth, which cracks me up. But Mumford and Sons, it just literally says whiskey next to theirs, and just again also simultaneously angers and cracks me up because I hate that band. But yeah, so but I thought that was interesting that Metallica, a band who was once known for their nickname Alcoholica,
that's exactly what I was thinking the whole time you were reading that,
is now known, or is now looking at making their own brand of alcohol. So good for them. I'll try it. I'll definitely try that. Sure. Obviously, like I see that Iron Maiden beer all the time, but for some reason, and supposedly it's because of the fact that canned alcohol does not taste good to people who have dental fillings. Dental fillings.
Really?
Supposedly, because love's a strong term. I like Yuengling's beer. It's as far as like the big domestics like Budweiser and Coors, Miller, it's the only one of those that I'll willingly drink. I mean, I have a 6-pack of Yuengling Light and a couple of Yuengling's Black and Tans in my fridge down here right now. But I drank some of it out of a can with my brother, and I was like, this tastes like shit. Like, I love Yuengling. Why does this taste like shit? And he was like, oh, well, supposedly beer in a can, doesn't taste good to people who have dental fillings. I was like, oh, well, shit.
Wow.
A shit ton of dental fillings. So my liquor store that I go to frequently has that Iron Maiden Trooper in cans. And it's like, I kind of want to try that just because it's Iron Maiden, but I also don't want to try it because it's in a can. And everything I drink is either on tap or from a bottle. I'm drinking a Boulevard Brewery beer right now. And yeah, because Indiana, we can buy alcohol on Sundays now. Woo! Yeah, man. This Sunday, I gladly celebrated that by going and buying Boozahol on Sunday. So
you're gonna make a Sabbath, man.
Goddamn right. Last state in America to not allow alcohol sales on Sunday. So yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, man. Only took 256 years to get that shit passed, but
well, some people are slow learners,
Well, yeah, Indiana definitely falls under that category. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a cool story because, Sammy's got, his thing with Cabo Wabo, and of course, Yuengling twins, right. They have,
Diddy has a Ciroc vodka, which I got thrashed on some Ciroc vodka. I think it was 2009 or 2010. 2009, New Year's Eve. I drank like a fifth of Ciroc and just got wasted.
Wasted.
It was a good time, man.
So one of the things I had in the music news was Pharma Bro Martin Shkreli ordered to give up his $2 million Wu-Tang Clan album ahead of sentencing this week.
Oh yeah. Okay. So there's a new development on this because I heard about this a long time ago, but I hadn't seen any new developments on it.
Yeah. So Martin Shkreli has been ordered to give up his one-of-a-kind Wu-Tang Clan album as part of his fraud conviction. The most hated man in America was convicted of fraud in August and remains in custody after having his bail revoked. After having bail revoked over threatening comments made about Hillary Clinton on social media. Can you believe that shit?
You see, I remember hearing about this a long time ago, so that's kind of surprising to see something new popped up about it.
So he famously purchased a sold copy of Wu-Tang Clan's Once Upon a Time in Shaolin album back in 2015 and recently listed the item for sale on eBay. It's unclear if Shkreli still owns the fabled Wu-Tang album after eBay sale, but there has been speculation that the album may not be an official Wu-Tang release at all.
Right.
And that one's new. I didn't hear about that. So meanwhile, Wu-Tang's RZA, he said that he'll always respect Shkreli for making history by purchasing a Wu-Tang Clan album. He says we can thank Martin for being the guy who put his word on something and did it.
Word is bond.
I'm sorry?
Word is bond.
That's right. Yeah.
Bone Thugs lyrics.
So RZA told us at a Enemy article recently. He says, I didn't agree with the eBay thing, but when I read the paragraph on why he did it, I kind of respected and understood what he said. He wanted to give music, he wanted the value of music to continue. Within 8 days, the bidding reached over $1 million. And that means that there are people who put value on music and value on what we stand on. So even with all the negative things he's done for music, there's always a positive there. And that was a quote from him. Initially, the Klan wanted to forbid the buyer from publicly releasing the album for 88 years. That was in the sales contract, but over time decided to grant the buyer total freedom as long as the album wasn't sold commercially. That meant the owner could listen to the record in a soundproof room, drive a pickup truck over it, or release it for free on the internet. If the owner desired, he could be the only one who ever heard it. So in an era where people are happy to stream music rather than actually possess it like an album or a CD, the Once Upon a Time Shaolin offered a chance to own something truly unique. So Wu-Tang hired Paddle 8, an online auction startup, to sell the album. The 31-track album had a hand-carved box accompanied by a leather-bound book with 174 pages of parchment paper filled with lyrics and background in the songs. The music itself was expected to be pretty spectacular. All the surviving members of Wu-Tang contributed to Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, along with some special guests. Aside from RZA and his co-producer, Tariq, nobody had heard the entire record. It was stored in a vault at the Royal Mansour Marrakech in Morocco, and any duplicates have been destroyed, which, you know...
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people that could say a lot of bad things about Wu-Tang, and you know, maybe a vast majority of them may have valid points, but you know, as far as music is concerned, you gotta respect them, man. I mean, because they got that integrity, like you were always talking about, you know. So
Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with.
That's right, yeah. So
I love Wu-Tang. Unabashedly, I love that shit, man.
And
Absolutely.
You know, I have individually either been in a room with or have physically shaken hands with almost everybody in Wu-Tang.
Oh, man.
And each one of them. Have you ever, you know, just imagine like if Karate Kid was real, okay?
Yeah.
And then you go up and you shake hands with Mr. Miyagi and you like, oh, God, this guy could kill me at any minute. Yeah. That's the way that I felt whenever I met each one of those guys.
Oh, yeah. No, dude, those dudes are not someone to mess with at all. First of all, like they're all legit as hell. The FBI has a dossier on every member.
Which we may or may not do an episode on later because I've actually worked on that.
And Ghostface Killah, first of all, in addition to making amazing music and being a phenomenal rapper, that dude, have you ever seen the video he put out threatening Action Bronson, another rapper? Have you ever seen that? Dude, look it up later. Like, I felt terrified for Action Bronson. So Ghostface is in the hotel room, like listening to some like smooth R&B. I don't even remember who he's listening to, and it's just playing in the background. And he is just talking shit to Action Bronson, telling him like, "Keep my name out your mouth. I'm gonna kill you," and just talking shit. It's like a 10-minute long video of Ghostface Killah just grabbing his junk and talking shit to Action Bronson, and I'm like terrified for Action Bronson the whole time I'm watching it.
And he's not a little guy, you know.
No, he I forget who it was. Either I think it was Jadakiss, the rapper from the late 2000s or late 90s, early 2000s. Mm-hmm. He one punch broke the dude's jaw in a club one time. I mean, Ghostface is not someone you mess with. That dude is a bad mofo. And I mean, the whole, like you said, the whole group is. I mean, RZA, has done the soundtrack for so many movies. He did the soundtrack for Kill Bill. It's classic as hell. Just such great music, such great artists, and badasses. Like, I would not mess with any one of them at all. So
one of the things I found out about them is they've really, for a lack of a better word, diversified, and they have like
diversify your bonds.
Yeah, right. So they have financial planning. They got
that's why Dave Chappelle made the joke about Wu-Tang Financial.
Yeah.
The whole thing, like, protect your goddamn neck. We're going to war. Invest in some nuclear bombs,
Gotta respect them. Gotta love those guys.
Oh,
man.
Yeah, they're awesome. And phenomenal artists, phenomenal rappers and lyricists and everything. This story is something I've followed for the last several years after it first came about. When they announced, hey, we're recording this album and one person is going to buy it, and that will be the only copy released to the public. So, man, this has just been a crazy story to follow.
If it was anybody but Martin Shkreli, I would be happy about it, but I just can't stand that guy.
Well, and see, like this story, I was following it long before Martin Shkreli was even on the public radar. Like, they announced it way before Pharma Bro ever, made headlines of any sort. So then when it came out that he was the one who bought the album, it's like, God damn it, man. Just no. So I loves me some Wu-Tang, man. And all the individual members stuff, I mean, Redman and Method Man, their albums are great. All of Ghostface's albums are phenomenal.
Red is so damn Wu-Tang, funny. Oh my God, he's funny.
Yeah, and Redman is hilarious too. Just all of those guys are just awesome. So yeah.
Did you ever see Red on Cribs?
Oh, dude, absolutely. That shit is legendary. We've talked about that before.
Oh, is that right? You talking about the one where he had the broke ass doorbell?
Yeah.
Oh, God damn, that was
supposedly he woke up and MTV was at his doorstep and he didn't know about it. I've also heard that was just a front that he put on. Either way, it's still hilarious, whether it was legit or not. It's still funny as hell.
Yeah.
So good for him. And Redman's just awesome dude and awesome, great rapper and hilarious person. And
So Rick Ross has reportedly been released from the hospital.
He has after possibly having pneumonia.
Well, I heard it was a heart-related problem, but according
Reddit was saying it was pneumonia, so that's either way. I mean, dude was sick as hell.
Oh yeah. So according to TMZ, the rapper returned home on Monday, March 5th, after 4 days in the hospital care for quote heart-related problems. He's currently receiving care at his residence, according to the same report. Rick was hospitalized last week after reportedly being found unresponsive in his Miami home. The Florida rapper was rushed to the hospital in the early hours of Thursday morning, March 1st, and was discovered to be both unresponsive and breathing heavily. TMZ initially reported that upon arrival to the hospital, Ross was taken to the cardiac unit and placed on a form of life support called ECMO, which apparently is extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. And I'm actually shocked
not a term I'm familiar with.
I'm actually shocked that I said that correct the first time. I stutter saying my own damn name. But apparently this provides assistance to a person who has heart or lungs or deemed not to be functioning properly. So that might be, I mean, I guess that falls under the pneumonia thing too, with your lungs, you know?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No doubt.
In a slightly related story to what we're doing, Tame Impala have collaborated with electronic musician ZHU, and I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. It could be Zoo because it's a Chinese.
Not familiar with it.
It's a Chinese band, but they're for a new song called "My Life." Chinese American artist ZHU, best known for his 2014 hit "Faded," took to Twitter in January to hint at the collaboration, tweeting, "All this is one word: Tame Impala ZHU," with question marks. So my life has now surfaced and features vocals from Tame Impala's Kevin Parker. Excuse me, Kevin Parker. So I haven't heard it, but I haven't really had time to look it up. So I'm going to check it out a little bit later on.
Well, I'm surprised I haven't heard it either, because guess who the first artist I have listed for this week is?
Shut up. Is that right?
I'm not kidding.
That's a good segue. Go ahead and kick it off, brother.
Right. So yeah, the first artist I have listed for this week is indeed one Tame Impala, which is a psychedelic pop rock band formed in Perth in 2007, and was originally intended as just an outlet for multi-instrumentalist Kevin Parker, which has morphed into a full-fledged band with some moderate success. You know, as you kind of touched on there, you've got some I've never heard of ZHU or Zhu. I'm assuming it's probably pronounced Zhu, but I have no freaking clue, so I don't even want to say that that's the correct pronunciation.
Well, you know, the only reason I even said ZHU is because it's all capitalized. And
it is all. See, yeah, that could very well be, man. You may be right.
Unless he's screaming a Chinese word, you know, I can't help but think that it's ZHU. But there again, I'm bowing to my American ignorance, you know.
Yeah, I got nothing, man. But Tame Impala is a band that seemed to get mentioned at least once a week on the Guitar Pedals subreddit. Although I think there's kind of an unspoken moratorium on their on posts about the band for now, because it was, I swear to God, for a while there, it was like every week there was at least one like, oh hey, I took a picture of Kevin Parker's pedal board last night. Shut up, you and like 15 other people. We know this, okay? But that's because their music is known for like crazy over-the-top effects and what music critics love to refer to as, quote, lush soundscapes, which usually just means a ton of echo and or reverb. And that's not to criticize the band, because I legit enjoy Tame Impala. They make some solid music. Like, I'm not talking shit about the band. I actually dig it. I just get really, really tired of hearing about them incessantly from people who seem to know otherwise very little to nothing about quote-unquote indie rock.
Well, and I can't help but put that in the same category as all these mooks that are getting on Reddit and saying, oh, look, I cut a bell pepper open and I had another bell pepper in it. Dear God, if I see...
Or I cracked an egg open and there were 2 yolks inside of it.
Yeah, oh God, there's just so many of those things. Oh, drives me crazy.
But Tame Impala is a solid band, man. Like, you should, if you haven't listened to them, check them out. I think it's a band I think you would enjoy quite a bit, especially their last single that they released, The Less I Know the Better. That's the name of it. I had to think there for a second. I think you would enjoy that. It's kind of like psychedelic rock and some kind of funk, sort of some funk influence in there too, a little bit. Really good stuff. Really chill, laid back. Really good shit. Great band. I do very much enjoy them, despite the fact that every guitar pedal wannabe nerd creams their pants over them. Good shit, though. Kevin Parker is a very talented individual, and that should not be overlooked or overstated. So,
well, the next one I have is one of my favorite bands, Australian or not, but it's Men at Work.
Yeah, man.
And
Absolutely.
God, I love those guys. Whenever they came out, they were, at least whenever I seen them on during the MTV VH1 days when they actually played music. They were so different. It doesn't matter where they were from, but they were just so different, and I dug it. So, Men at Work was an Australian rock band best known for the 1981 hit Down Under. Formed in 1970. Yeah, formed in 79. Their founding mainstay was Colin Hay on lead vocals, and he formed the group with Jerry Spicer on drums and Ron Strykert on lead guitar. Colin Hay was born in a small town of Saltcote, Scotland.
Oh, wow.
But his father James is a piano tuner, and his mother Isabel was a singer. In 1967, Colin's father, who owned a music store at the time, moved the family from Scotland to Australia when Colin was 14. So there again, it's one of those kind of transplant things, but I can definitely see that brother was only 14, so you might as well just say that brother's from Australia.
Well,
you know?
and I guarantee you, every Australian, I know a handful of Australians that I've met, through various groups I'm in on Facebook and whatnot. They all claim Men at Work to be Australian, so...
Oh, yeah.
Pretty sure that's legit there.
And they were joined by Greg Ham on flute, saxophone, and keyboards, and John Reese on bass guitar. Before joining Men at Work, Greg Ham was once a school teacher in Melbourne, and this lineup achieved national and international success in the early 80s. Their first album, Business as Usual, spent 15 weeks at number one in the U.S., which was a record for a debut album at the time, and it was eventually knocked off the spot by none other than Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Whoa, I did not know that. That's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, man, because if you're going to have your record knocked off the chart, man, that's a good one to get knocked off by.
Have it by like one of the best-selling albums of all time. Yeah, that's legit.
So Fleetwood Mac brought them along as an opening act for their Mirage tour, which ran September through October of 1982, which that had to have been that was a good concert, I bet you. In November, the following November, Men at Work toured as headliners supporting the Australian band called Mental as Anything. Do you know them?
What was the name?
Mental as Anything?
No, I've never heard of them before.
So in January of 83, they were the first Australian artist to have simultaneous number one album and number one single in the United States Billboard charts with Business as Usual. With the same works, they achieved the same distinction of simultaneous number one album and number one single on the Australian, New Zealand, and UK charts. Their second album, Cargo, released on May 2nd of 83, was also a number one in Australia, number two in New Zealand, number three in the US, and number 8 in the UK. It's kind of sad the way that, well, I mean, I'll read it, but it's this is just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. But I feel that they were taking the advice of the record companies, and the record companies, all they care about is money.
Oh,
they don't care about
100%.
Artist integrity and all all that shit.
Not in the slightest.
But at the Grammy Awards in 83, they won the Best New Artist category, while at the Area Music Awards in 94, they were inducted into a related Hall of Fame.
Okay, interesting.
Men at Work have sold over 30 million albums worldwide. According to Australian musicologist Ian McFarlane, irrespective of the band's fairy tale rise to prominence, their phenomenal success inextricably created worldwide interest in Australia and Australian music.
I agree.
They simply opened the floodgates with no more than a clutch of great songs.
Yeah.
The group disbanded in 86 and reformed in 96, only to disband again in 2002. Starting in 96, the band reformed to play select gigs, but were largely inactive. Colin Hay, who was dropped by MCA Records after his 1990 solo album, spent much of the 90s building a new fan base by playing small venues around LA, where he moved in 1991, and I'm almost positive he still lives there now.
Well, and I know that he plays some shows even out here. There was a festival in Indiana back in 2010, 2011 that he headlined, and I, for the life of me, can't remember the name of it. But one of my
I know that he had his own thing there for a while, and it was pretty much. Now I don't know who owns the rights to all the music, but the last time I had anything to do with him was. Let me finish this last two,
sorry.
And then I'll get to it. Yeah. So among his new fans was Scrub star Zach Braff, who got him on the show in 2002, which I thought that was an awesome
remember
episode.
watching that episode. My then girlfriend was a huge fan of Scrubs.
That was such a good show. The following year, Hay signed with Compass Records, which re-released a solo album to put it out as an independent artist. And what I was getting to earlier was that in 2009, Colin Hay played at the Birchmere in Alexandria, Virginia. And there's one of our clients in Virginia Beach. I was driving limos, just like I'm back doing now. Yeah. And he was... Nobody's ever heard of this guy, but he's a very well-off gentleman. But he's a big fan of Colin Hay. Not just Colin Hay, but of Men at Work, in general.
Yeah.
And he's I don't know another title for it, but he's an arms negotiator for DC.
For who?
But for Washington DC.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Legit.
So. Oh yeah, dude, it's scary. Some of the shit that I've witnessed through him. But anyway, I on a slight tangent, I'll tell you that one of the kicks I get from driving limo is the company I work for. We mainly have a list of clients that we deal with. Mm-hmm. We rarely do weddings and bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and stuff like that, unless it's for the people that are on our list of people that we take care of. And because of that, you get the same driver all the time. You get the same car all the time, if that's what you want. And so there's a bit of trust between you and your clients, and it's a lot different than driving for like a regular limo company that you'll probably drive them once and you'll never see them again. But with these people, you get the same driver until you call up the owner of the company and you bitch about it and say, I want another driver. I can't stand this asshole. So because of that, there's a bit of trust there. So it's sometimes fascinating to be witness to some of the conversations that goes on in the back of your car.
I bet, yeah.
And the conversations, some of the conversations that I've heard, and some of the phone calls that I've heard, I feel like I need to sign non-disclaimers or something, or some of the stuff. I mean, like my eyes are drying out because they're so big. But anyway, so we went to the Birchmere in Alexandria, and we got to meet Colin backstage, and nice. He did like kind of like an acoustic set, and. To hear him do the acoustic version of Overkill was really, really good.
Right. I mean, and that's what he did on Scrubs too. I can remember that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. But I was really impressed with him. He's a really grounded, really humble guy. I mean, he talked to me just like he talked to my client. Awesome. And, he knew I was a driver, but he treated me just the same as everybody else. And the one thing that I thought was a little bit surprising was his eyes were not as crooked as I originally thought.
What?
Well, whenever you see him on the videos, he's got eyes kind of like Marty Feldman.
Okay.
Like one's looking at you and the one's looking off to the side, like he's holding two conversations at the same time. But and that's kind of disarming a little bit if you're not used to being around people like that. Right. But I don't know if he got it fixed or if he can make it go bad on purpose, or I don't know. But like if you watch the video, Who Can It Be Now? Yeah. Whenever they shoot a tight end close up on his face, you can really see it there.
I mean, I've seen those videos obviously, but I don't remember that. But I mean, maybe that's just me being my weird kind of antisocial self and not focusing.
Maybe
on that. I don't know.
Maybe I just look at shit a little bit different than most folks. I don't know, but I was really like whenever my client, whenever he told me, we'll just say his name is Tom. Whenever Tom told me that we get to go backstage, I was like, oh, cool, okay, well I'll wait out here for you. And he's like, no, come on back. You'll like him. He's a great guy. And I go, okay, so. apparently he's met him and had supper with him, and I think they vacationed down at somewhere in Mexico at one time.
Okay.
I mean, he knows him very well,
Gotcha.
but like I guess you could say they're actual friends or whatever.
Gotcha.
But anyway, I went to shake his hand, and he's not a very big guy, but I went to shake his hand, and hey, it's really a pleasure meeting you. And I didn't want to geek out or anything like that, but it was kind of a big deal to me, but he's looking at me straight with both eyes, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be a lot easier than I thought, so. So anyway, that's what I got on that. Go ahead.
I kind of mentioned this last week. My parents were huge Men at Work fans.
Oh, yeah.
Massive. The last concert they went to before they swore off all rock music was Men at Work with NXS as the opener. And I'm not even joking. Like that's legit. They loved Men at Work. So
no, I'm laughing because you say they swore off rock music.
No, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm not exaggerating that. Like, they went. So this might be getting a little too personal, but they saw a guy supposedly lighting up a joint for his daughter at this concert, and went home and like threw away all their records after that.
No,
I'm not kidding, and didn't listen to secular music for like 20. Well, okay, I'm exaggerating. Like 15 years. I'll probably say 15 years.
But it wasn't anything the band did. It was something that a fan did.
The thing is, they didn't really think about that until I told them. I told my dad that specifically. Just because you saw somebody doing that at the concert doesn't mean that the band supports that. Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
Jeez.
Maybe I shouldn't be telling this. I might edit this out later. We'll see. We'll see how brave I'm feeling.
No, keep it. It's all good. You didn't say no names. Anybody could be your parents.
But
anybody could be your parents. Keep it in. They don't know.
Yeah, there you go. So the next artist I wanted to cover is probably my favorite out of all the artists and bands that I'm talking about here, and that is one Mr. Nick Cave.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, Nick Cave is just such a badass. This dude is just amazing. Just a consummate badass. I mean, musician, singer-songwriter, author, screenwriter, composer, and even occasional film actor as well.
What?
Yeah. The man has been involved in several different acts, but is most well known as the leader of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And it's one of those bands where I feel like a lot of people have probably heard some of his material, whether they realized it or not. For instance, the song Red Right Hand has been featured in movies such as Dumb and Dumber and Hellboy. And then my personal favorite of theirs is Lie Down Here. Great song. Really great song. And The Mercy Seat is one of their more popular songs as well. If nobody's listened to any of Nick Cave's output, those three songs there are definitely a great jumping off point. But my personal favorite act of his is The Birthday Party, which was a post-punk band that he led from 78 to 83. And their 81 album, Prayers on Fire, is just absolutely amazing. From the opening track, Zoo Music Girl, just throughout the whole album, just great stuff. Definitely worth checking out. Grinder Man was another project of his that he started, I think, in the late 90s or early 2000s. I don't remember exactly when he started it, but again, another great project of his. And in addition to the bands that he has led, he's also composed the soundtracks to several movies, most notably The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, starring one Mr. Brad Pitt as the titular Jesse James. And he also appears in the movie and sings the ballad Jesse James in the movie as well. Yeah, great movie. Great soundtrack too, and it's just another one of those things of artists making great soundtracks, like Neil Young doing the soundtrack for Dead Man Walking, starring Johnny Depp, and Kurt Cobain did the soundtrack for a movie too, and I can't think of what it was. Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead doing some movie soundtracks, stuff like that. Just really good stuff. And he also did the soundtrack to the movie adaptation of Cormac McCarthy's post-apocalyptic masterpiece, The Road, which is an absolutely amazing book and an all right movie starring Viggo Mortensen and Charlize Theron. Fantastic book, decent movie, although I feel like the video game The Last of Us told the story better, even though it wasn't based directly on the book itself. But yeah, great stuff. I mean, I can ramble about Nick Cave for much longer, but please just go do yourself a favor and listen to as much of his music as you can, because no section of his music is bad. I just everything the guy has done is just phenomenal.
I think he wrote something for Kylie Minogue, didn't he?
I mean, that could. I'm not going to say no, but I'll be very surprised if that's the case. That doesn't seem like something that would be in his interest of any sort. It's possible. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm not aware of it if he did. But Nick Cave is just such an amazing artist, and definitely one of the best Australian artists that I'm familiar with. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely influential. That's for sure.
Big time. I mean, there's so many bands that you'll see cite him as an influence. Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, absolutely. I can't even tell you. I can't even begin to think of how many bands I've seen cite him as a huge influence on them.
Well, the next one I got is Ice House, and that was, back in the day whenever I was, I guess, in my formative years of figuring out what kind of music I like. Yeah. That was kind of a big one because they had like a big sound, and they were really. I don't want to say necessarily influential, but they definitely kind of forged a path for that 80s sound. Yeah. So they began in 1977 as a Sydney-based pub rock band called The Flowers, who were the highest, at the time, they were the highest paid unsigned act in Australia.
Huh, interesting.
And and I never really thought of that as a category, but I guess it is. But in 1980, Flowers scored a record deal with Regular Records, which I've never heard of them. But it's a great name if you wanted to be like, really humble, and released their first album, which was called Ice House, and it received critical acclaim and reached multi-platinum status in Australia and New Zealand. It soon became the highest selling debut album in Australia at the time. The iconic cover art for the album was created by the Flowers drummer, John Lloyd, who was a former art student. So I think that's a unusual thing that not a lot of bands do,
What was that? Having a member make the album artwork?
Yeah.
No, that's pretty common.
No shit, really?
Yeah, one of my favorite bands I've talked about several times, talked about them last week too, Hot Snakes. Their singer does all the artwork for the band. Adam Jones, the guitarist from Tool, does all the artwork and even directs the music videos for the band.
Oh shit, no kidding.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's I'm not going to say it's super common, but it's pretty common.
So after performing their song Ice House at the Countdown Awards, the band was awarded with the Johnny O'Keefe Award for Best New Talent of 1980. And I'll tell you, I really wanted to research the Johnny O'Keefe Award, and it was really hard to find anything about the award because I've never heard of that name. I've never heard of that award. But Johnny O'Keefe was like a really big deal in Australia, and I didn't want to go into too much about him because honestly we could really do a whole episode just about him.
Oh, I bet. And there's plenty of other Australian artists too that we could. Well, whatever. I'm not going to go into that.
But without going into too much detail, that was like a big award in 1980. So in 1981, the Flowers changed their name to Ice House as it went international in order to avoid conflicts with another group that was called the Flowers. So with their new name, and they didn't tell nobody. This was like super secret Pentagon shit. They didn't tell nobody. like everything was timed just right. Yeah. They were acting like they were fighting for the name and all that kind of stuff. And then boom, they're going on tour as Ice House. It was like
no kidding.
Yeah. So it was really calculated, like in a good kind of way, business kind of way. It was really calculated. But with their new name, the band embarked on their first overseas tour, taking on the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. The singles Ice House and We Can Get Together were released in Europe and America, and the evocative Russell Mulcahy, I sure hope I'm saying that right, Russell Mulcahy video for Ice House generated much interest. It was the 1987 Man of Colors album, however, that made Ice House a true international success with smash hits like Crazy and Electric Blue. And Electric Blue was a friggin' smoking monster, man. Oh, that was such a good song. But they were peaking near the top of both the U.S. airplay and the sales charts at the same time. Man of Colors became the highest local selling album by an Australian band and Ice House's most successful album, selling more than 1 million copies in Australia and reaching gold status in Canada.
Oh, wow.
With as much as 19 musicians who have been or still are members of Ice House, it's the songwriter, guitarist, and lead vocalist Iva Davies who is the band's creative heart and driving force, which I've heard that name, and if I've heard that name, they're a big deal, because I don't know shit. But the famous guest artist was Brian Eno, who was featured on the 86. Yeah, who's featured on the 86 album Measure for Measure.
Really?
Eno had previously worked with Roxy Music, David Bowie, and U2.
Yeah.
In 2006, Ice House was inducted into the Australian Recording Industry Association Hall of Fame, being described as, quote, one of the most successful Australian bands of the 80s and 90s. In 2006, Man of Colors was still the highest selling album in Australia by an Australian band.
Well, so now, hold on. Back this train up just a second here. So I'm a little familiar with Ice House a little bit. But Brian Eno, explain to me his ties to this band again, because I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with him, but Brian Eno is a legend.
Oh yeah.
So how was he tied to the band again?
Well, he was featured on the 86 album Measure for Measure. Now, I didn't really go into a lot of research on exactly what he did, but it was obviously a big deal to have him on the album.
Oh, yeah.
And from what I read, and it was just really, in the face of full disclosure, it was a very small amount of research I did about this particular part of the story. But from what I gathered, it was kind of like reading between the lines. It was like his idea. Like he went to Iva and was like, okay, I think I can add value to this, and of course Iva Davies is like, okay,
well, yeah, you'd be
sure.
stupid to turn down any collaboration with Brian frickin' Eno. That's amazing. I did not know he had anything to do with him at all. That's wow. Holy crap. So
that might have had something to do with their success, although Man of Colors really it's still in 2006 it was still the highest selling album in Australia by an Australian band. So obviously that's a big deal. Maybe it's been overshadowed now, but because that was 12 years ago, but still, even to get to that point at that time, that was huge. Australia ain't no small country.
No, absolutely. That's awesome. I did not know he had anything to do with them.
Yeah,
so, that's pretty cool.
What else you got?
Oh, let's see here. So the next act I've got listed here is an electronic pop duo from Australia called Empire of the Sun. It's a collaboration between Luke Steele of alternative rock act The Sleepy Jacksons and Nick Littlemore of electronic dance outfit, and I have no clue how to freaking pronounce this, PNAU. Now, I don't freaking know. Empire of the Sun's a band I've been listening to for a long time, but I have never heard of this, PNAU. No freaking clue what that is or how to pronounce it. But so it's strange. I've been listening to these guys for like the better part of a decade, and I've never heard of this before. But
wow.
So they met at a bar in Sydney in 2000 at the insistence of an A&R executive because both of their main projects were signed to EMI at the time. And Littlemore contributed a song to the Sleepy Jacksons' 2003 album Lovers, and Steele contributed to Littlemore's side project Teenagers. At the same time, the two had a brief falling out over one of the songs on Littlemore's Teenagers albums, if I'm not mistaken it was. But they reconciled eventually and began working on the material that would comprise their debut album, Walking on a Dream, in 2007. The title track from that album, in addition to just being a damn good and catchy as hell synth pop song, has been played all over the place, from retail establishments to commercials. I mean, I can remember being in a Sears store and hearing that song. I was like, oh, holy shit, I love this song. What the hell is this doing being played in here?
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just really good. Definitely check it out if you get a chance. Their song Alive from their second album, Ice on the Dune, was used as the intro video to Google's 2003 I.O. conference, which is, so every year Google has this big conference, and I think it's coming up within the next month or so. This year's iteration of it is where they announce, new projects, new products, the new version of Android. They give a preview to that every year at this, et cetera, et cetera. So they had a song actually used as the intro to Google's conference in 2013. Their third album, Two Vines, was released in October 2016, and late 2017 saw Steele announcing that he and Littlemore were working on a fourth album as well. But yeah, definitely an interesting duo. And like I said, that song Walking on a Dream is just a solid song, man. I love that. It's such a great song. But yeah, really cool little band that again, a lot of their music has been featured on commercials and whatnot, but a lot of people don't know who they are. So definitely a band worth checking out if you get a chance.
Well, as an homage to one of our earlier episodes, Australian Crawl. Mm-hmm. Australian Crawl was often called Aussie Crawl or The Crawl by their fans. Was an Australian rock band founded in Mornington Peninsula, Victoria, Australia, by James Rain on lead vocals and piano, Brad Robinson on rhythm guitar, Paul Williams on bass, Simon Binks on lead guitar, and David Rain on drums. And they were formed in 1978. David Rain soon left and was replaced by Bill McDonough, which on drums and percussion, which isn't drums and percussion the same thing?
Well, I mean, percussion could be also things like bongos or congas or any other sort of instrument that's struck rather than, fretted and plucked and whatnot. So,
right.
Yeah.
So they were later joined by his brother Guy McDonough on vocals and rhythm guitar. The band was named after the front crawl swimming style, also known as the Australian Crawl. Had absolutely no idea about that one.
No, me neither.
Not built like a swimmer, so I'm not really shocked. I didn't know that. Australian Crawl was associated with surf music and sponsored a surfing competition in 1984. However, they also handled broader social issues such as shallow materialism, alcoholism, car accidents, and cautionary tales of romance. And that was, I had to PC that one up.
Gotcha.
After their 1980 debut album, The Boys Light Up, it reached number 4. Australian Crawl had 2 number 1 albums, 1981 Sirocco, which we talked about, and 82 Sons of Beaches. That was a great name. But
also
their
a really
early
terrible
single
show, I think, in the early 2000s.
Oh, was it really?
Well, Son of the Beach, that was the name of it.
Oh. I always thought that was the name of a really cool song that Jimmy Buffett could come out with, but I guess he just didn't grab that low hanging fruit, Their earlier singles reached top 25, but none broke into the top 10. Their best performing single was number 1 hit Reckless, which showed more mature approach to the earlier hits and came from their 1983 Semantics EP. Upheaval within the band occurred from 1983 onwards. Ferg before first Bill McDonough left, then his brother Guy McDonough died in 1984. Various other members left shortly after that. Their 1985 release, Between a Rock and a Hard Place, was expensive, but sales were rather disappointing, and they disbanded early in 1986. The band's status as an icon on the Australian music scene was acknowledged by the induction into the 96 Australian Recording Industry Association Hall of Fame or area. Founding guitarist Brad Robinson was unable to attend the Hall of Fame induction in person as he was hospitalized with lymphoma, and unfortunately he died 2 weeks later.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so that was kind of sad. I'm really hoping that, that whenever we did the episode that had to do with them with those two songs, I don't know if it was, like I'm just hearing about that story, like solely, like just me alone is hearing that story for the first time, or if there's really like a wave of people behind them saying that, they really need the credit that they deserve. But I was really hoping that, but that was like, 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, whenever all that shit happened. So,
Well, I'll say this. I know the comments that were being left by the guitarist on YouTube were from 2 years ago. So that's as much as I know about it. I know that.
So if anything was going to happen, it probably would have happened by now. Far as that's a shame because they're really a good band. I mean, I love that guy's voice. The musicianship on it was absolutely solid, original. Right. I mean, the whole 9 yards. They had everything in the world going for him. It's kind of shame that. Maybe he's out doing stuff now. I don't know, but as a band, it seems like a shame, like a really huge pool of talent there that just really kind of got, set to the side because they didn't make it big in the U.S.,
Right, exactly. And, as we've kind of talked about, it seems like Men at Work really is the one who kind of paved the way for Australian bands to have some more success in America. And unfortunately, it sounds like, those bands kind of fell by the wayside. So, yeah.
Well, what's your next one?
Well, the next one I've got's a relatively small band, but people who are familiar with them tend to be pretty into them. There was an Australian hardcore punk band from Perth called Miles Away, and I'm kind of surprised to say that they are and not were, because I had no idea these guys were still around even.
Oh shit.
That between that and the fact that most hardcore bands have a shelf life of maybe 3 albums or 5 years, whichever comes first. These guys were popular in kind of like the early mid 2000s is when I first heard them. And if you're not a fan of late 90s, early 2000s hardcore punk, don't expect to enjoy this band. I'm not telling people to go out and listen to them because unless you like that stuff, you are not going to enjoy this. But I personally loved them back in the day. And I saw them at least once or twice touring through, like northeastern Illinois, like Chicago area and Indiana. I forget where all I saw them at. But I know the first time I heard them was on some compilation album from the early mid 2000s. A lot of these like small hardcore punk labels, like 1917 Records and Bridge 9 was still fairly small at the time. Now they're a huge hardcore punk label, and Death Wish Incorporated, which is the singer of Converge, that's his label. All these labels like that would put out compilation albums with just like one song by a band, and people would, oh hey, I like this song, so I'll order the whole album from them. But so I heard them on some comp album like that, and I really dug their 2004 album Make It Count. But they kind of had that Boston hardcore sound, like American Nightmare, which was the biggest hardcore punk band by far at that time. But really, really good stuff. Really enjoyed that band. Haven't listened to anything of theirs since then, really. So I don't know exactly what they're up to these days, but really greatly enjoyed them back then. So
well, we've touched on a few of the bands, and like I said at the beginning of part one, this is by far not the definitive list, and there was a lot of more well known names that I ran across that I tried to dodge doing. I think that's easy to grab low hanging fruit, and there's so many people that do it, but some of them were like the Divinals, the Church, Little River Band, Split Ends. Olivia Newton-John was a huge monster.
Kylie
Air
Minogue.
Supply, Savage Garden, Kylie Minogue, Keith Urban, Natalie Imbruglia. There were the really, really big names, and I just think that they're doing okay for themselves. So there's really a lot of them are more relevant than the ones that we were talking about. But I just personally I didn't want to go down that easy road to go down.
Exactly, and that's why I avoided ones like that too. Like even there was a female artist by the name of Butterfly. I thought for a long time it was Butterfly Boucher, but I guess it is pronounced Boucher, Boucher, who I thought about covering as well, because I used to hear a lot of her music in stores and whatnot. And her father apparently was a well-known artist in his own regard back in the 70s and 80s. I'm right there with you, man. Like I didn't want to cover some of the more mainstream bands, so to speak, like that.
Yeah.
But it's nice to cover this type of stuff. There was another band, another heavier band in recent years that's gotten pretty popular called Parkway Drive from Australia as well, but I don't enjoy their music at all. They're popular. They're really popular. I kind of see them as like a stepping stone for a lot of people to get into heavier music. Kind of like, and there was a lot of bands like that when I was, first getting into that scene as well. So I'm not going to talk shit about them for that.
Right.
For that, just because the fact, again, I know there's a lot of music I listened to when I was first introduced to the heavier scene that I look back on now. I'm like, why the hell was I listening to that? But Miles Away is a band I'm like, you know what? That album was really good. I really enjoyed that. So, kind of wanted to give some props to them.
Well, and I think that some people, they tend to get a little bit militant on their music that they listen to. And, I get that, whatever genre that you're into, I get it. I think there's some where you have less militant, like you never hear anybody go really get up in your face and go, you know what, if it ain't Yo-Yo Ma, it ain't shit. Nobody ever does that, so I understand people really loving what they listen to. That's why you listen to it. I get it. Right. But I just kind of feel like people need to be open to other people might like other things,
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's cool that you dig your thing, but don't jank me just because, I like whatever,
Right.
So.
Right. And I think that anytime you completely cut yourself off from any genre or subgenre of music, like you're allowing yourself to miss out on good music or music that you might potentially like. I mean, sure, there's a lot of people out there who's never going to ever enjoy anything, remotely heavy, but you shouldn't just wholesale write off an entire genre. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you got to be open-minded on, pretty much everything in life. Absolutely. And I think that's music is a form of information. And whenever you close-minded on any kind of information, you lose in the end,
No doubt. Completely agree.
Well, that's all I got. Do you got anything more to add to this, brother?
I got one more. Band with a real fun name here. I got a King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Man, you can't beat that for a name.
And for those of you who have never heard that absurd name before, I will say it again. That is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
You can't beat that for a name.
No, and before you say anything else, I'm going to go ahead and confirm your suspicion that drugs were almost guaranteed to be involved when they came up with that name. Yeah. Because these guys kind of came up with the last big wave of like garage/psychedelic rock bands in the late 2000s, early 2010s. You had music is real cyclical. We know that, okay? And so especially, it seems like especially garage rock bands and psychedelic rock bands are very, very cyclical. And in the late 2000s, early 2010s, you had bands like Waves and the OCs and King Kong and the Barbecue Show, etc. All these guys kind of getting popular again, riding the backs of the last two waves where you had in the late 90s bands like Times New Vikings and Neutral Milk Hotel. Then in the sort of early mid 2000s, you had like the White Stripes and whatnot. So these bands were all kind of riding that next wave of that popularity yet again. But I really enjoyed their output around this time. I haven't really listened to anything they've put out more recently. I think the last one of theirs I listened to was 2013's Eyes Like the Sky. Not because I didn't like it or anything like that. I just kind of forgot about them. You know, that's not an insult to them or their music so much as it is a knock on me for just not keeping up with their output. But I've noticed I'm getting some more mainstream recognition in the last few years. I've heard them mentioned in some like TV shows here and there. It's like, oh, holy shit, someone just said King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard on this show on television. What the hell is that all about? It always surprises me to hear bands like that get brought up. Like, who paid who to get that mentioned, or who has the cool hip, like what like 40-year-old writer on this show has a cool and hip teenage kid who's into this band? Right. Part of the reason they've gained some notoriety in the last couple of years is because in 2017 they put out 5 albums.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know, right? Which, I mean, that's pretty impressive. Although with garage rock and stuff like that, the music's pretty stripped down and straightforward, so it's really not, and I'm not knocking them by any stretch of the imagination, but it's pretty easy to write a song in that genre. You know what I mean? Because it's just pretty stripped down stuff. But it's not an insult to them by any means, because it still takes a pretty solid work ethic to actually produce 5 albums in 1 year, regardless of the style.
Oh, sure.
I'm just saying, you know, it's a little easier to write their style of music, but you know, it's also worth mentioning maybe that one of my favorite artists who I've mentioned several times on the show, one Mr. Omar Rodriguez Lopez of At the Drive-In and the Mars Volta, put out 1 album per month in the year of 2016.
That's right. I remember we talked about that.
Yeah, we have talked about him before. But King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard, you know, definitely a solid act. Again, if you're a fan of stripped down, straightforward rock music with a little bit of an occasional psychedelic detour here and there, they are definitely an act worth listening to. So that's about all I've got. I mean, there's, like you mentioned, you know, there's all sorts of Australian acts that we can talk about. But I mean, those are the ones that I was interested in talking more in depth about than anybody else. So,
yeah. Well, I had a good time researching all this.
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely.
Lord knows I learned a lot.
And I actually listened to a new Australian artist last week, Vance Joy. Put out a new album, and I've seen a lot of my friends talking about him, so I gave it a listen. I wasn't a huge fan of it. It kind of fell into the, you know, Mumford and Sons / Lumineers-esque, also ran folk rock kind of act, but you know, whatever. I'm not bashing the guy, just wasn't my cup of tea per se.
Sure.
But,
well, I tell you, whenever I first started this, I didn't think I was going to be talking about any of the bands that I talked about. But well, I knew I wanted to do Australian Crawl because, you know, that was, you know, we talked about them previously in an earlier episode. But outside of that, none of these. Men at Work, I knew I was probably going to get to at one time or another.
And I knew you would do them as well, which is why I didn't say anything about them too much. So.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm glad we did it. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad we did it. So anyway, music history doesn't stop just because our podcast episode is over.
Yeah, anytime you guys have a music myth or legend you would like to hear us talk about on the show, you can hit us up on social media. Find us on Facebook at Tall Tales Music Mythology, or Twitter at T2M2 Podcast, or you can always email us at hosts, HOSTS, at T2M2.org.
And if you want to know more about the Smarts Project and what we can do for your high school music programs, join us online at our home on the web at thesmartsproject.com. And our complaint department is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at Randy at thesmartsproject.com. Now more than ever, be kind to each other. Tell your kids you love them each and every day. And whatever you do in life, never be a myth.
Always be a legend.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. Hey everybody, John here. If you'd like to hear me rant about other topics besides just music, check out the Gluff Nation podcast, where my brother and I tackle topics from politics, pop culture, and tech trends. Find us on YouTube, and we'll be bringing our rambling diatribes to iTunes and everywhere else podcasts are available soon. Thanks for listening.